Okay, welcome back to Revelatorium, the podcast that comes around once a month, just about as often as we have conducted book clubs in modern times. 1 month is about the amount of time we've conceived that it takes to select a book, read it, and discuss it in a month, and that's the amount of time it takes me to assemble the sort of anthology of my October as I'm doing for you today. The only miserable part of this is that this cannot fully be dialectic. There cannot be a synchronous form around it. I have constructed a form of that with the survey I send out every month. And people always ask, where is the survey? When does it come out? I can't tell you that. As the only person that has any control over it, I can't tell you that. I can tell you where. It's going to go ahead and be on the community tab of my YouTube channel and on my Instagram story, both on the Revelatorium and Cathrout account. So you can picksies and choosies on which account you feel beholden to and is worthy enough for you to follow. I don't know if anyone's considering worth of accounts as they follow, but something I do want to just briefly consider for a second is like follow for follow culture. I can't even remember at this point if I've talked about follow for follow culture, but I think I've brought it up on TikTok, much to the chagrin of every 19-year-old out there that happened to find it. And I've had two of my beloved peers bring it up on their own volition as well on TikTok, trying to build a movement around abolishing follow for follow culture. And people aren't taking to it. We're a little too early on the adoption curve of it. But like, I think there's this sort of like weird entitlement we've grown, or I'm not even going to count myself into this because I've seceded from follow for follow nation. And I have for quite some time, or maybe I was never even really a citizen of that at all. But again, to the point I made last episode about how we never really developed any norms about respect and decency online. I've just been discussing it with a few people that like a lot of people, when they follow someone, they expect or they anticipate receiving that back. And when they don't, they are hurt or dejected in some way. But what I'll tell you is, as someone who is a poster, and I'm like, I'm not even identifying as a content creator anymore. I'm not trying to identify as anything anymore, actually. Like, I'm going to be briefly post identity for a second and just see how that feels, and then I'll reassemble it. But like, I am briefly post content creator. I am, if anything, I'm a poster. Like, I'm just someone who posts. I like to punch something into the archive of my existence and put it on out there. And I recognize that like, it's very rare when I exchange Instagrams with someone that they will post as much as I do. It is very rare. And so I almost want to invite them to consider, if you don't want to follow me, please do not. When someone asks for my Instagram, I'm like, I don't even know if you really want that. I post a lot, a lot. And most of the times the people that are on the other side of that, they're not posting anything. So then there's this like real asymmetry to like how much we're posting. And so when someone follows me, I'm like, I'm going to clog up your feed. And maybe not truly in that sense, because I've recently discovered that a lot of people, when they watch Instagram stories, they tap through them at like a meteoric pace. They crash through them. Like, they're just not even really absorbing them. They're just kind of like super cutting them in a way that like, your brain can't even possibly absorb, but somehow it is. Like, I don't think I'm delicate necessarily. Maybe the word I do want to use is delicate about the way I watch Instagram stories. But now that I'm using Clear Space, I called it Clear Channel on the podcast and misled some of you. Clear Channel, as we all know, is the advertising conglomerate that produces the billboards that terrorize us on our roadways in this nation, this abominable nation. This irredeemable, abominable nation that we will never vote our way into liberating ourselves from. Let me just speak my piece on that. Like, a participatory democracy, to me, doesn't feel freeing. It feels like every time you vote, you're asking for the chokehold around your neck to be loosened a little bit, but you're never going to fully be able to like move freely. You're always going to be having to ask permission, and you're always going to have to ask for like legality around what you can do with your body and your Maslow's hierarchy of needs, etc. So I'm like, If you're feeling jaded about voting, I think that's good and you should see it through, because there are many conventions of the ways that we could organize ourselves. There are many conventions to the way that we could organize ourselves, and one could be a direct democracy. One could look like hyperlocal community assemblies. There's so many different ways to like approach this. Anyway, somehow I got from follow culture to revolutionary politic. Everything's interconnected. That's one of the theses of this pod if you've not caught up to it yet. And eventually I need to travel back to the book club topic to get to the next point of revelation that I want to discuss, because we actually haven't even gone to the first true revelation of October 2024. Anyway, to close the loop on the follow for follow piece, I just think that like there is this entitlement, there is this sense of like, yes, reciprocity, which is one of my values, but also like there is this asymmetry to the reciprocity where it's like, okay, I'm giving like so much posting. I'm giving a lot of my postings to you. Okay, just in the abstract, thinking so abstractly about something relatively meaningless that I have still been able to construe meaning from. If you have an account with 0 posts, you don't post on your story, what is the value of me following such an account? Okay? If you're not like giving anything, what would the significance of me following be? Because if we can DM, which we can, my DMs are open. Like, I leave that shit open. Maybe I shouldn't, but I do. If we can DM, like, at that point, it's just sort of like an egoic exercise. And like, I recognize your worth by like following you on Instagram, when it's like, if I'm responding to your DMs and I know who you are and we hang out in real life, let's start there. Let's put the work in materially for each other before we start to think about what it means to show up for each other online. Like, I'm not really as concerned with that. That doesn't provide my life that much material good. The best times when people show up for me online is when I'm like, remember one time when I was working in tech, I like lost my AirPods case or something. And I posted and I was like, does anybody have like an extra AirPods case for some reason? And somebody did. And I was like, amazing. I'm so glad I posted. But the ultimate transaction of that post was something embodied in person, in real life, an exchange of goods and services in that way. So I'm like, I guess I'm just saying, follows should not be an indication of worth or dignity at all. It's something so different. When somebody I follow does not follow me back, there's a question mark of why they chose not to do that. But ultimately, if we're getting along and we're appreciating each other's presence, otherwise, I'm not mad. And honestly, it's getting away from us. It's literally getting away from us. And what got away from me in this moment was talking about book clubs, which we somehow have all reached an agreement around being monthly. Like, every time I hear about somebody in a book club, it's always monthly. And I'm like, what an interesting coagulation of temporality. Like, we're like, this is the frequency that works. And I agree. Like, I'm literally not even here. I'm like, it makes sense to do it. It does not make sense to do it quarterly as much as it makes sense to do it monthly. Doing it weekly is too often. And if you're listening to this podcast and you're like yearning for that book club type outlet to be in like a reading group, I have an option for you. And it's conveniently called the Cather Out Book Club. And we meet once a month. It's organized through Patreon, but I do it on Zoom. And it's truly a good hang every time, a real meeting of the minds, some true smarties in there that I respect, admire, and glean so much from every time. And this month, okay, I did want to follow up on something I mentioned in episode 23, which was that I wanted to create a Substack anthology. I wanted to create an anthology of all of my favorite essays that I've been reading recently, and I did that, actually. I made a full anthology of 22, I think, maybe even 24 different pieces that I've read this year that have left a lasting mark on me. Like, the barometer for which I chose things, like, I literally painstakingly went through every screenshot of an essay that I had in my phone. I went through every link I had sent to somebody, every like my Chrome history, my Substack history. I went through it all. I scraped my digital footprint to bring these to a Google Doc, and I will be releasing that Google Doc for my end of year little. I hazard to call it a gift because I'm like, is literal homework a gift? I'm like giving you these essays to read, but to me, something so meaningful is knowing what pieces of media have impacted people, and these are 20 or so pieces of writing that have done that for me. So that'll be on my Patreon. And then also I chose 5 selections from that list that stuck out to me that were a little bit more bold than the rest to serve as our November book club read. So it's like literally perfect timing if you're listening to this in the first couple weeks of November. Like, I'm not putting this out until the second week, but we're not meeting until like the end of the month. So we might meet like the 25th of November. We might meet December 1st. So like, come hang, like join the Patreon. Like it won't take you that long to read them. And also I'm very accepting on my book club. It's very come as you are. So if you only read a couple paragraphs, like you're still welcome. Okay. Book clubbing sort of weaves its way into the throw blanket of this month's revelations because I spent early October in Cleveland. I was talking with somebody I met there about how I don't feel that I am a builder, but that I do feel that I am a designer. Like, I don't feel I am the daughter of an engineer, and there's certain practices around that I've inherited. Like, I know when you're packing the trunk of a car, you put, like, if you're packing for a camping trip, you put the hard stuff in first and the soft stuff in second, because the hard stuff is not malleable, so it needs to be locked in place. And then the soft stuff, you can squish around it. And I thought that was intuitive, but I'm coming to understand that that is something that I learned or was like socialized in me because I am the daughter of actually 2 engineers, but I've never found myself drawn to building engineering. Like, I took a woodworking class, my table's in my front hallway. I'm very proud of it, but I didn't enjoy the process. I didn't find a sense of belonging in it. And I probably could have muscled through it, but I was just like, I don't really find myself, like, even in ceramics, like when I took ceramics class for 6 weeks, I loved the glazing. I loved picking out which glazes to do, how to dip them, how I wanted to sort of design the like sheen of the project. But the actual like throwing process, I just really didn't find myself that interested in. And so I've been sort of relegated to, and also just embracing, like, it's beautiful to be someone who like has an aesthetic inclination, and like I like to design. Like, I don't find myself as intrigued by knitting as I do by embroidery. Like, to me, knitting is like, they're both of course decorative, but like knitting is much more building than like embroidery is. And so I created this dichotomy because I enjoy thinking about my life in those types of frameworks as like a fun thought experiment to try to communicate who I am to the world. However, I think I got too rigid in it, or sort of it was corrupted from the jump by my sense of gender, because the person I was talking to, he was like, don't you think you are a builder? Like, you are someone who, it's like, you've built your Patreon book club, you've built your podcast, you've built your YouTube channel, you build stand-up sets, you build group trips, you build cohorts for our political education collective that we're a part of. Like, all of that is building. And I was sort of dumbfounded by that because I'd never considered those things building. I'd never considered event planning to be building. I'd never considered like that when I make a spreadsheet for my camping trips, that's building. When I make an itinerary, that's building. Like, those are all, because to me, that's like such enjoyable work that it doesn't feel laborious. And I've attributed like building with like laborious, arduous things that I don't like, basically. And also in that, we kind of came to the conclusion, because this was an intergender conversation, that a lot of the forms of building that I consider to be traditional are like things that men more typically do. Like, literally construction sites, it's very rare that you see a woman as a construction worker. Like, it's very, very rare. Like, in my woodworking class, I was the only woman there. There were women that were part of the studio, but they weren't in my class. So I was like, no, there's women that are doing this, but it's like that type of thing a lot more men are doing. I love building fires, by the way. Okay, so there's that. But the things I spoke about, event planning, book clubs, that's like feminized building. And so it doesn't get the recognition of building that everything else gets. And that saddened me when it dawned upon me, because I'm just like, I can't believe that we don't appreciate that work, or even thinking about like political and social movements. Those things are built, those things are built. But like, I don't think people would consider those feats of engineering like a bridge is. But that's like some of the most detailed and like complex building you can do is actually relational building. And that's the point that I really want to arrive at here, is that like I, more than anything else, am a relational builder. And right now I'm struggling because I have a bike. I'm a very affinitive bike rider. I don't even know if that's a word, but I just carry a lot of affection for biking. I biked home before I recorded this podcast, and it was raining down on me, but I was so overjoyed. I was whistling. I was smiling. I was really enjoying seeing people on the sidewalk and the colors of the ground as the water reflected the streetlights. It was just very, it seeped in pleasure every time I get on my bike, no matter how high the hill is. The sense of wonder I get from it is so life affirming and renews me, truly, replenishes my spirit, like God's honest truth. But I've been struggling because I managed, when I think about building, like I had a really fraught time trying to install my front fender. I ordered a fender, which is what covers the top of the wheel so that when you bike through mud or through wetness, it sprays on the fender and not onto you. And so I installed the front one with the help and encouragement of my dad on Facebook Messenger video for 90 minutes. Because one thing you may know about me, because I'm offering it to you, is that all of my family are Android users. So I'm sort of in this interstitial basically, I can't FaceTime my family. It's really hard, you guys. It's really sad. House divided. That's where all my intimacy issues. So anyway, went through the plight of Facebook video, which is sort of humiliating to use. I don't know why, but it just is. And I can't even get into the argument I had with an Uber driver who butted into my rant about Mark Zuckerberg. Like, oh my Lord. I've had 2 times in the last like 3-4 months where an Uber driver has interrupted my conversation with my friends. And I'm not here to say like they are separate from us and we are having a private, it's like, no, an Uber is not a private experience. It's not public, but it's not private. It's in between. They are there. They can hear you. A lot of times I am having a conversation with my Uber driver, but in this case, both these situations, I was having an ongoing conversation with my friends about something very much weighing on my heart. And they chose to jump in to basically condescend to me. And it's very disheartening to me that, I don't know. Okay, I think what really bothered me about both these situations is that they didn't jump in to be helpful or to corroborate what I was talking about or to encourage me. In both cases, they were basically like backing up the thing that I was lamenting about. In one case, the thing I was lamenting about was the fact that I haven't found a lot of stability in intergender relationships with men that aren't queer. Like me and straight guys, there's not a lot of friendship on the table there. And it's just, you can listen to whatever the episode title I have that's about weird men coming on to me. You can listen to that one about this situation. But I recently had an Uber driver interrupt me to be like, well, if they're straight and you're a woman, I don't know what you expect. Like they're just gonna hit on you. And I'm like, that is so reductive and like essentialist and like shitty. And I don't want to hear that from you because you're literally confirming the viewpoint that has been really deflating in my life. And I was just like, this is not what I want to hear on my way to, like, I think we were going to like some sort of pride party or something. I was like, what? So that was one time. And then the most recent time was when I was complaining about Facebook. I was complaining about Mark Zuckerberg and how tyrannical and like evil he is. And the guy basically jumped on to spew this like boomer propaganda about how Mark Zuckerberg is spreading Marxist propaganda on Meta. And I'm like, you've got it so twisted, because someone at a party someone just shared with me this clip of a whistleblower at Facebook talking about how the content moderators, he was a content moderator, and they were asking them to tag any footage of wounded Palestinian children as pornography so that it would not get shown and it would get flagged. And I'm like, when that is going on, how can you say that they're actively but that, of course, I didn't even know that was going on. Like, these things are literally so suppressed. So I'm just like, your understanding of what's going on within the meta empire is like so twisted. Like, you're getting your news from like, I don't even know what source, but any freaking way. I was on the maligned Facebook app to go on video with my dad so he could teach me how to put the front fender on my bike. And it took 90 minutes and I was disgruntled the whole time. Like, it was an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm, the way I was behaving. Like, I was just so irritable. I really did not enjoy the problem solving of how to install this fender. It was not enjoyable. However, like, my dad loves that kind of thing. And I know there's so many people out there that love to fix bikes and would do it for free and do. There's like a bike clinic in Seattle where they help teach you. And I want to go to that, and I want to build these skills myself, and I want to have this building knowledge. I think it's so important to like skill build and like not be so reliant on institutions and not just cash out on everything, but to like learn about your food systems and like your tools around you and like these types of things so that you have more of a place in it all. But I've sort of relinquished control over the bike tuning. For so long, I never got the back fender done. It took me 90 minutes for the front one. I never got the back one done. And so I'm like, we've reached the wet season, the rainy season in Seattle. And if I'm going to bike, which I plan to do, because I have a new commute I've been doing on it, I'm like, I need to have that back fender. And I was waiting to install it myself or to have someone help me or to go to the bike clinic. And I just said, you know what? I am unwilling to go to the bike clinic from 12 to 4 on a Sunday to do this thing that I actually abhor. Like, I am like throwing a tantrum psychically to not do this. So let me just pay out. Okay. Let me just pay out. I'll pay someone who enjoys to do it. And it cost an arm and a leg. It was so expensive. But that bike ride home today, I was like, it was worth it. It was worth it. But ultimately, I'd like to get to the place where I have enough relationships built where I know somebody like my dad who knows the bike skills. So it's like, I don't need to be so self-reliant and learn every single skill if I have built relationships with people who have those skills. Like, my neighbors are my plugs in a lot of ways to tools and services and skills and things around the city. And like, my friends offer me their cars to borrow, and they know so much about, like, I have friends that know a lot about herbalism. I have friends that know a lot about like open source technology. You know, it's like I have friends with a bunch of different skill sets. And so it's like, if I can build relationships with knowledgeable, curious people like that, I don't have to own all the skills myself. And so I'm acknowledging that like relationship building is a form of engineering too. Like, it's discounted, I think, a lot of times. And that concept of like personality hire, my first revelation for this month, I just entitled like, I am reclaiming what it means to be a personality hire, because I feel like that carries some pejorative tone to it, as if you are a personality hire, that is denoting in some way that you are incompetent, that you don't offer like material service to the place you're working. And without speaking to the corrupt nature of how our labor market is set up and what it means to have a job, you can read Bullshit Jobs by David Graeber to learn more about that. Bring that to your book club and talk about it. Personality hire has value and it exists because we need morale boosting. We need spirit. We need entertainment. We need to be jovial. Like, court jesters are ancient personality hires. And I am literally an entertainer. It's what I've been outfitted to be, probably from a source of benign neglect, but like that's something I work out on stage and in therapy. But I don't like I don't want that kind of work to be discounted. Like, relational work is so valuable, and I think it's a disavowal of that work to sideline it. Or even more so, it's like a disavowal of that work to say that like you're just born that way and like you just have that, and like there's no effort in being a personality hire, when truly like entertaining people, it's a craft. Like, storytelling is a fucking craft. You have to do a lot to understand where to synthesize something, what are the compelling points to hit, how to like narratively tell that. And I think maybe that's coming from people who don't do a lot of it, so they just assume that it's like very easy and it comes naturally to those people because they've never worked on that craft themselves. But I'm just like, being a conversationalist is a skill. It's not just like a God-given gift that I've had. Like, when you do it and you exercise it, you tone it up, but it's not visible like being an Olympian is. Like, you can see that like clearly there's a massive muscle on this person that they weren't born with. And so you're like, oh, they've worked for that. But like, being a conversationalist, being a relational builder, being any one of these things, a personality hire, like, it is seen as just sort of like you're flaunting something that's just like there. But I can tell you, as somebody who fills that role in a lot of positions in my life, I'm not here because it's just effervescent and like effortless. It's like, no, like it takes like, you have to rally. Like, you have to rally. So recognize that. And what I'm also recognizing revelationally, or at least I did last month and I continue to do so, is as I relationally operate in this world, who is drawn to me? Not necessarily who I am drawn to, but who gravitationally I find myself pulling in over and over. Because like, I don't know if it takes 28 years to reach clarity on this, or what exactly has meant that I'm arriving at this point now, but I'm gaining clarity on like, there's certain patterns to the kind of people who keep showing up in my life in different cities, in different venues, in different situations, where I'm just like, these people, like, they find me. It doesn't even feel like I'm finding them. And of course, if they stay in my life, I am also attracted to them. Like, I find them appealing in some way. It's not just that like they find me appealing and they're drawn to me. It's like, if they stay in my life, I'm clearly drawn to them as well. But I'm saying these are the kind of people who I'm like finding in my cone of interest. And some words that come to mind would be people that are peculiar, eccentric, idiosyncratic. They appear to me. Okay? More specifically, occupationally, the way that that manifests is like, I've always been a friend to stoners. I've always been a friend to queer people. I've always been a friend to neurodivergent people. And now at this stage in my life, I'm finding like the people that are showing up in my periphery are hedons and anarchists. And those are because of choices that I have made. It's not just like I've stumbled in. It's like, obviously I'm like, I am architecting my life in some way that like I am finding myself in this field or in their field of view. But hedons in that, like, I'm really enjoying that, like, I'm surrounded by people more and more now that like know how to have a good time and how important that is to me. And I think maybe I've neglected the value of that, or I've taken it for granted. But like, I grew up with somebody who, we could go to the cliffside of San Francisco. We could go to Fort Funston, for the real ones that know that deep cut. And we could have no phones in our pocket, no camera, no toys, no games. And she would find a way to literally live, laugh, love the fuck out of that place, just running around, like just jumping from patch of moss to patch of moss, like enjoying. I couldn't even articulate. And I was so puzzled by that because I didn't find myself easing into enjoyment like she was. And lo and behold, that's one of my earliest friends. She is now a queer stoner and has ADHD. So like, what I'm saying is like, these things all fold into each other. A lot of these things are, what do they call that? Comorbid. What I'm saying is like, if you've got an entry in the DSM-5 that describes you, like, we can hang. We can fucking hang. Okay. But I think over time I've grown to close the gap on like how to have a good time. And I'm someone now, like one of my affirmations is like, I'm never like that worried when I show up someplace and I don't know too much about what's going on or like who's going to be there. Cause I'm like, I know how to have a good time. And if you know how to have a good time, you're like, you don't have to be overwhelmingly worried with like the outcome of a situation because you're just like, I know whatever's happening, it's going to be a good time. Like I went on a cabin trip with my friends this year and I was worried that the weather wasn't going to pan out. And I was really fucking concerned that they were going to be like, this is a bummer because we were expecting this and now it's ruined because the weather was bad. And I was like, I forgot that I've been surrounding myself with people, at least for the last few years, that know, and even since that early friend at Fort Funston, that know how to have a good time. And so it didn't matter what the weather was going to be. And like, I'm planning a trip next year and I'm having some of those same concerns with, what if this top aspirational thing I want to happen doesn't happen? Well, whatever. We'll have a good time no matter what. And so hedons know that better than anyone. They take it to an extreme. They're sort of like good time accelerationists. And at this juncture in my life, I am appreciating that because I think this is one of those things that when I look back in 10 years, I'll understand more of why this is like at this time entering my cone of interest. But I think when you have some heavier forces pulling you down, you're also looking for more sort of delirious forces to pull you up. And hedons know how to get that. Anarchists, just because I love talking politic. And those anarchists, they got really interesting conceptions of how to support each other and whatnot. So naturally, the next intersection I pulled up to after opening the car door of who is drawn to me and realizing it's stoners and queer people and neurodivergent folk and hedons and anarchists is like, why is that happening? And does this say something about me? Do the people that are drawn to you reflect upon you? And I've asked questions before to you all in the survey, and we'll get into the survey results later this episode. They're juicy. There's always a lot to squeeze out of them in that way. But it's like, do the people you choose to spend time with resemble you? Because I wouldn't say I am like squarely locked into any one of those markers of like stoner, queer, neurodivergent, hedon, anarchist. But of course, by virtue of spending time with those beloved people, I'm exposed to those ideas. I'm exposed to those ways of being. I'm very comfortable. I'm very well versed in them. So it's like, am I just familiar with these things because it's who I'm surrounded by? Or does that mean that in some part, I do think I agree with in some part, you are what you're attracted to or what you desire or whatnot. But I don't know if it's in full part or in large part. And I think the conventional wisdom, especially around queerness, is like, if all your friends are gay, you are gay. And I am going to apply some heterodox thinking to that and question that and ask, like, is that the conventional wisdom because it's universal? Like, can you be someone where all your friends are stoners and you're just not a stoner? You know, can you be someone where all your friends have ADHD? And all is very black and white, you know, exaggeration. But like, I don't, for like, take the neurodivergent one. It's like, I don't have any diagnoses. I've seen psychiatrists before. I'm in therapy. I have not gotten any cognitive disorders. I've not gotten any cognitive diagnoses. Obviously, diagnostic criteria, the DSM-5, all of it is very corrupted. It's racist. It's built on predications of misogyny too. So there's that. Anyway, I wish I could source you guys readings on those things. I can't remember exactly what I studied up on to understand that. But anyway, I've not been pathologized to like have a diagnosis, but oftentimes people with ADHD just understand me, period. They understand me, period. And they think they understand me because I have ADHD. And I grew up in an ADHD household in that 50% of my family members had it. And so my running joke is that I am similar to a coda, a child of deaf adults, where they have deaf parents, but they themselves are hearing. So there's sort of a bridge between the hearing and the deaf world. But so they themselves understand deaf culture, but they are not deaf themselves. I am like that for ADHD. Like I'm a coda huda, child of ADHD adult. So it's like I am bilingual. I can speak both languages, but does that mean I necessarily have ADHD? No. Do I think my executive function has been dysregulated by polluted forces? Certainly. But as someone who has very intimately observed and been a witness to ADHD and its manifestations, I cannot truthfully and honestly say that I have it. So anyway, I'm basically thinking about that's the intersection I got to after I got into the car of these people are drawn to me, and I pulled up at the light and I said, why? The light turned green. I drove down it, and then I realized I don't really need to know why, like if it means that I am these things because I'm drawn to these people, because no matter what, I relish in that I can be a bridge between communities, between these things. Because if I am not all of these things that I'm attracted to, well, that just means that we can have heterogeneous friend groups where not everybody is the same. And I can hang is what that means. It's that I don't have to be that thing to be around people. But it's like, I think it calls into notion the like concept of cultural competency of like, I think of course, like when you think about like men that are friends with a lot of women, it's like, are you friends with a lot of women because you're trans and you're actually a woman? It's like, no. But sometimes it's yes. Like sometimes it's like you are like finding yourself amongst those people because like there is something you haven't quite like unlocked about yourself. And so I'm kind of wrestling with like, I'm like, am I just like really in denial about some of these things and like really obtuse, or is it possible? And I really embracing for impact by revealing this, because I know that the predominant like narrative I've heard is like, yep, you are. Like if you're hanging around those people, you are. Like there's something you are. And I guess I have a little bit of a lighter touch with it, and I'm not that prescriptive or like essentialist about like these things. I'm just I'm a little bit fluid in all those ways. And like I can say, at least for the stoner one, it's like I can enjoy being stoned, but I literally do it like some months once or two times. So it's like that's not really reading as that to me, So, and then last revelation was some dissonance I was having around the genre of pride. And I'm calling it a genre because there's like a few different pieces in that genre. Like there's the word prideful and there's the word proud. And this is going to be one of those things where I could have done more research and I could have found a YouTube video and I could have found a think piece on it, and I didn't. I just want to muse about it here and actually allow anyone in the comment section, if you know something, to drop your knowledge and we can have a little interaction. In that I'm really confused why we say someone is like too proud to apologize. And then when I say that, people say, oh, they mean like she's too prideful. But I guess I'm like, the origin of prideful is pride, is being proud. But when someone is like too proud to do something, what are they too proud of? And then people are saying too proud of their ego. But it's like pride, I feel like, has more to do with like an accomplishment or a characteristic. Your ego is something much more like esoteric, and like I've never heard of someone being so proud of their ego. I've never heard of that before. So I'm like, when we keep saying like so-and-so is too proud to apologize, or too proud to go up and talk to that person, or too proud to follow you back on Instagram, like, is there something you can point to that they're so proud of that it disables them from doing that other thing? And also, why is being proud so sort of esteemed and like hopeful and like trimmed with gratitude, and prideful so disgraceful and so maligned and so sinister? I'm like, how can these things have the same origin and they're so close? It's the same thing as, did I talk about this on an episode where it's like being friendly is awesome. Being friendly and affable is awesome. Being too friendly, you're a creep. You're a creep being too friendly. It's like the English language, just fluency is impossible. I'm struggling with fluency, you know? And so I ask you in the comment section, or if on Spotify in that comments, or maybe I can do in the Q&A part, like, what would you point to that someone's too proud of when they won't apologize, or when they won't dignify someone with a hello, you know, at a party? Okay. And now scooping up themes of October that I want to plunge into November. And I'm recording this so late that we are already in November and I'm seeing these things continue. But first thing I'm taking into November is being bohemian. I have finally understood myself through this lifestyle. And I'm not talking about boho. I'm not talking about like the way I decorate my house or the way I style myself, although it's very interesting to me that I would say, if you looked around in my apartment, maybe not bohemian in that I have like, or boho in that I have like a lot of macrame or like, you know, crochet or something, but it's like, I definitely have like an eclectic sense of style that could lend itself to that. And there are certain, you know, bohemian genders to my clothing, but the definition of bohemian from Oxford, if we're going to go with that, is a socially unconventional person, especially one who is involved in the arts. And I'm like, clocked. Like, I'm bohemian down. And I think I resisted bohemianism, especially when I was in my yuppie days seeking normiehood by working in big tech and lavishing in happy hours. I was living in a very traditional way, and now I'm finding myself like I'm countering that in pursuit of like, I really do value creativity and community and activism more than contributing to economic output, and I don't know, just taking something seriously that I would say most of like my classmates growing up and like in college, probably the way that they are going about it is just, I'm pursuing a little bit different things now. Like, I was just listening to, also something I'm taking is the Up Good podcast with Honey Pluton. Like, I shared that on the Revelatorium Instagram story. Anytime you're like, why hasn't Kath uploaded? Like, I need 90 minutes of that Revelatorium now. Honey Pluton uploads every Tuesday. So tap in there. You're going to get a lot more electric, psychedelic, galaxy-brained insight from there. But one thing that he was talking about on there was the most recent episode with Joel Kim Booster, which I'm only partially way through. He was saying that he's just kind of like, he just kind of refuses to like let his job dictate the way that he lives. Like, if there's something he wants to do, he does not let his job get in the way of that. And I think that speaks to like time theft. If you understand that concept, I think it speaks to like some other things, but I'm like, yes, that's a very bohemian, like he is living his life in pursuit of like his comedy career and like his beloved friendships and all of that. And I'm like, I find such divine inspiration from the way he talks about his approach to his life, because like it reflects my values too, and like this bohemian spirit. It doesn't mean that I'm a total dilettante and that I'm not taking anything seriously and that I'm not entrenched. In fact, I think it means that I'm taking things seriously that a lot of people don't take seriously. And as a result, like, I think that's why it's even more important for me to find these types of eccentric, idiosyncratic hedons. Hedons a lot of times are very bohemian people, like all of that. Like, I need to build a little bit more of a bohemian reverb around me. Okay, I'm also taking hospitality, which like we could loosely tie back to like the Uber driver conversation. And this is also tied into Honey Pluton, because he was talking about it in one of his earlier episodes that like we are losing a sense of hospitality and just like really being kind and compassionate to strangers, and not because we think we're going to have any sort of long lasting relationship with them or that we'll even see them again, but it's just like it's worth treating each other well. But I think I, through my fortunes of traveling, have interpreted that growing up on the West Coast, growing up in Northern California, spending time in LA, spending time in Seattle, I have not felt culture shock up and down the West Coast like I have when I go to the South. I went to New Orleans for work a few years ago, and I was staying at this hotel, checked in at the front desks. Whenever I would come back, for the night, I would go to the elevators and I would go up to my room, and I did that every day for several days. One day, my key card wasn't working. I went up to the front desk and I was like, hello, my key card's not working. Like, could you please help me with this? And they were like, oh, finally you come talk to us. And I was taken aback. I was like, oh my God, what did I do wrong? Because this whole time I'm thinking when I'm walking in the front door of the hotel, I'm going to the elevator, that I'm sparing them from the burden of extra labor of like, okay, now I have to like talk to this girl, it's like this girl who's pleading for connection or whatever. It's like, oh no, like I don't need you to like, turn on a smile and like do the whole song and dance and like really do that for me. Like, but I didn't realize that by just assuming that they didn't want to do that, that I was discrediting their interest in like connecting just for the sake of connecting, like out of a professional, commercialized Trader Joe's cashier trained to flirt with you type of thing. They just actually have a different sense of hospitality in the South than I am used to. And so like, I think there's this whole narrative right now about like cashiers don't want to talk to you, and like that's all changing around. But like that trip, like that one light bulb moment is something that I reference all the time now, is like that was a moment of culture shock for me, because immediately when they said that, I felt so like happy that they wanted to connect, because I was like, oh, I literally love to gab. I'm happy to chop it up with you all. And so they helped me with the key card. I was asking about the scent that they had in the diffuser. It was this amazing Palo Santo scent, but they were like, don't buy it from this expensive thing that they like make us buy it for the hotel. I found it for my home from this alternative source. I was like, that's amazing. She turned her computer around. We were talking about that. We were talking about other candles and other things. And it was just like, again, we're talking about candles. This is in many ways like coworker conversation. It's very much small talk. Okay. But it was so just like redeeming that we cared enough about each other not to just like have a conversation for conversation's sake. Because as I'd proven the days before, we didn't have to do that. It was that they genuinely just wanted to like learn a little bit more about me, have that moment of, release of a little bit of that, and get on with our days. And I wasn't trying to hog them, overstay my welcome, like expect that they're going to be my friends. But just like accepting that. And then a few days later, I was sitting on a park eating a beignet, listening to a podcast in my AirPods. And a man sits down next to me and he starts talking to me, which that never happens on the West Coast, mostly because I think that wouldn't even happen if I didn't have my AirPods in, but especially when someone has headphones in, it just creates a barrier to entry. Like, I am just not going to go talk to someone with headphones in as readily as I will if they don't, because it's a clear signal to me that's like they don't want to talk. They want to hear someone else talk on a podcast that's not here right now. They don't want to talk to me. They want to listen to music. They want to do something else. Maybe they're on a work call. I don't know. Okay? Occasionally, you know what, you're at the gym and someone's wearing headphones, you're going to have to butt in to be like, hey, did you leave this behind? Can I use this machine? What's going on here? That's a little bit more normalized. But I was so glad he did, because we had an amazing 45-minute long conversation on that bench. I was so, like, it was so unassuming. I had no idea it was coming for me. And it was so, again, life affirming and uplifting and spirit filled. And I'm like, this is what I'm talking about. That's what hospitality means to me, is just like really showing up for somebody, not because you necessarily need something from them or expect something, but just because it's nice to be a humanist and express yourself. And I asked you all in the survey what moments of hospitality you've experienced, and it was just so charmed to read all of them. So I cannot wait to get into that later. I'm also taking, and this is something I've been taking for the last year I've been in this apartment, it's a blinds up winter. We're no longer experiencing 9 p.m. sunsets. It is dark here now, 4:30 p.m. onwards. And that means that when I have my lights on and it's dark out there, I am lit up. I am in my little cubicle. I'm in my little hamster cage and everyone's looking at me. And well, that's not true. I feel very comfortable doing it in this apartment and not my last one, because I'm not on the first floor in this apartment. So it's not just like any passerby can see me. But I am looking across. My tree is now bare enough that I can see across the way, and I can see into somebody else's apartment who's also blinds up. And that is basically my across the street neighbors who I've not met entrusting me to a little bit of that, and not full privacy, and just like kind of embracing that. It seems very European to me, and I've had that confirmed to me by a European who's in my apartment, and was like, yeah, we should all be naked window neighbors. Like, we should all be doing this. And I can say, as someone who, like I said before, is trying to take more night walks, and I have been doing that, I love when someone leaves their lights on, because I love soft, warm lighting. I love seeing the shape of someone's dining table and how they arrange their bookshelves. And it is, of course, voyeuristic, but that's the whole point of urbanism, is that there's density to this. I'm not on farmland where I'm a mile away from my neighbor. I am right here. And to deny that and to assume that, I don't know, I'm like, we're all entitled to some sense of privacy, but also if you're willing to let me in, I would love to admire your setup. Okay. Briefly, because we need to pedal a little bit faster on our bikes here, I am accepting coworkers as coworkers now. I'm taking that forward. I'm accepting comrades as comrades. I'm accepting acquaintances as acquaintances. I'm accepting party friends as party friends. I have triumphantly reached a point in my project of building a social life here that I now feel sustainable security in social support. I don't feel like I'm desperate to make new friends. I feel like I have wonderful friends. I feel satiated in my social life at this present time. And I am still open-minded. I'm still meeting all these new people. I'm still inviting people into my life and making room where I can. There's less and less room, though. I was thinking about on the light rail today, I was like, I almost sick in a sick and twisted way. I almost miss when I was so lonely when I first moved here, that I had to fill up my social life with taking a bunch of classes. And I don't have time to take classes at the community college anymore, because it's my week is kind of filled up now every week. Like I can't do it anymore. And I'm like, I want to do that more, but I would have to like drop beloved things in my life to do that. So basically when I first moved here, I was really focused on like converting acquaintances to friends. And now I'm enjoying that, like, I don't have to force anything. If somebody doesn't click with me, if there's not a mutual interest, I am not disappointed to have someone simply be an acquaintance, to have someone simply be, someone I see out and about at parties, and there's no sense of like guarantee of how much they're going to be in my life. Like I think a lot of times on this podcast, I spoke about conversion and retention, extroversion, just a couple months back, about how proud I was that I had reached a point where I feel like I have seen some conversion from, somebody who was my massage therapist into my friend. And like, that seems really cool. But I'm also like acknowledging that it's like, I don't need to transform every relationship into like wide or deep intimacy. Like, it can just be a brief but significant touch base, And finally, leaving. I'm finding myself leaving less and less, interestingly, but I am leaving the gatekeeping of grilling. I'm tired of it. I am pushing back. I'm saying no. And if you are someone who you have felt hesitant to grill because you had felt like it was such a tall order, let me tell you, as someone who's been grilling since I was in like middle school, it is not hard. Any dad or any person who tries to convince you that it's very complicated, that they just need to take care of it, and that it's like, some special thing. No. When you get to the point where you are like smoking meats and doing things for 8 hours or whatever, I don't know about all of that. I can't speak to the dexterity of that. What I can speak to is if you're trying to grill sausages, asparagus, corn, shish kebabs type of things, kebabs, you can do it, okay? You can do it. And I think it's a travesty that I feel, and I've been speaking about this, I've been socializing it. I think a lot of dads have convinced us that it's like, whoa, I got to take care of the grill. And so we all have been so hands off. But I can tell you, almost every single group trip, because I am going on trips with mostly queer people, there's no like straight dude that like has taken on the grilling onus. And so I end up being the grill master. And you know what? I love it. I love the feeling. I love the divine masculinity of that. I love pretending to stroke my mustache and like doing that whole thing. And it has not gotten more complicated than it was when I was in middle school. Like you can learn it. Don't let people make it out to be something more complicated than it's not. Okay, now we get to delight in other people's viewpoints, not mine. And every time I read these, I literally feel like I am that kid from Elf who finds the naughty and nice list from Santa of all the kids' Christmas wishes. And he's like, Linda from the Bronx wants a Susie talks a lot. Like, I literally feel like that. But we'll start with what you're leaving. And nobody, much to my surprise, said the gatekeeping of reeling. So I had at least one semi-original thought. Emily, who's 24, writing in from my thrifted broken chair whilst remote training. She said she is leaving the idea that my life is on a specific timeline, heterosexuality, the movie We Live in Time, It Frickin' Destroyed Me, very triggering, and warm weather. And I included this one because I have had my plans dashed to see this movie, but I am a longtime Andrew Garfield supporter and an appreciator of Florence Pugh's delivery. And I'm glad to see this had an effect on you, because I was very worried it could be like the movie Foe, which has Saoirse Ronan and Paul Mescal in it, which I was like, there's no way they could fuck that up. But it was kind of a mellow, subdued movie, and it wasn't like as powerful as I wanted it to be. So I'm hoping that We Live in Time lands and deplanes on my heart. Somehow that's the only leaving I highlighted of the full stack. So moving on to taking, Davey, who is 23 in Los Angeles. So glad to see Davey's name pop back up. Davey is taking the consumption of media where the meaning and entertainment of the consumption is enriched by discussion with others. More group movie watching and discussion. Totally, totally, totally. And that's why it actually brought me so much great cheer to read that Gabrielle, who's 25, writing in from a friend's couch, I'm cat sitting while they're away, said that I found out while responding to the survey that the friend I'm cat sitting for left a letter for me. I'm so excited to write back, and I will ask them the questions of the month in the letter. And I'm like, I talked about this in the previous episode. I'm so happy that this can be an agent of connection for Davey, for Gabriel. Like, I'm not assuming that this is my media enriches discussion with others for you personally, but I've heard that for others, and that is like very, very gratifying to me, that maybe you're talking about pride with your friends or hospitality or the people that are drawn to you or those types of things. Like, I was on a call for the political project that I organized with, and as like a little icebreaker, they asked, what is something that you just like endlessly love to learn about? And my first thought that I almost denied writing into the chat was my friends. But I just wrote my friends smiley face, and a bunch of people liked it. And I was like, oh, because I feel like a lot of context, if I said one of my favorite things to learn about was my friends, people would really think like I was not, a scholar. I'm not erudite. Oh, you don't like learning about, I think the most tokenized thing would be like quantum physics. But it's like, I am so intrigued by my friends. I just want to learn. And so that's why it always is very mystifying for me when someone doesn't want to let me learn about them, because I'm like, that is what I love to do when it is appropriate. The sleepiest little guy, writing in from the empty open plan office, Friday work vibes, who's 27, said they're taking into November festive dressing. Halloween is obviously the superior holiday to dress for of them all, but the fun doesn't have to stop after the 31st. Kind of want to dress like a bit of a Halloween freak 24/7, but I'm sure I'll tailor it more in the lead up to the more family-oriented holidays ahead. And I am in full support of this. I typically am sort of averse to Halloween in the way that I'm averse to all holidays, which is to say that they're very compulsory in my mind. Like, there's a very established, and I like ritual and tradition, but I think I like personalizing it and making my own. And I suppose Halloween, you are able to do that because you get to personalize your costume. But I think I just get caught up in I don't like that everyone's expecting me to have this, that, and the other. But this Halloween, I was nervous because last Halloween, my plans kind of fell apart. Halloween before, I didn't really have that much to actually show up to. But now my efforts to build a social life have sort of swirled together in that I ended up having 5 or 6 different occasions to dress up for. And I dressed up in varying degrees. Some of those things were just, I'm going to wear my pumpkin beret, or I'm going to, recycle a costume from a previous year that didn't get enough wear out of it. But I had planned for I actually didn't get to do, I wanted to be a nymph, but I just didn't get my shit together. So I did some conservative choices that I had kind of prepped, and then just kind of worked with what I had, because I'm just I don't want to buy a bunch of new. That's what I don't like about holidays. I don't like the consumptive nature of it. I'm I want to just, I don't even want to thrift 18 different pieces. I want to just thrift a few things. I don't want to buy something off Amazon. But I had so much fun dressing up because I feel like it was sort of a way to have fun with some gender fluidity. I was Heath Ledger from Brokeback Mountain, Ennis, for one night, and that was really fun to be a little more masculine. There was one night where I wore my mustache wig for a comedy thing and was basically just a fuck boy for the night. And then I was Princess Diana, I was Fleabag, and those all like represent me to some extent. And so it was nice to do that. And I think you should keep doing it. Like, who cares? And I think also like I am also drawn to people who are like a little crazy because like I'm a little crazy. Like I've always used the words like woo woo or kooky or like nutty, but like those are all just euphemisms for like sweet little girly euphemisms we use for like, actually there's something a little crazy in me. Like I've recently let myself sing on the street because every time that I hear somebody outside my window singing loudly on the street, I do think like they're a little crazy, but like I appreciate it because I'm like, they're literally the meme of I'm crazy, but I'm free. I'm like, they are uninhibited. They are liberated to do exactly what they want to do in that moment. Doesn't matter like what the social conventions are. And so I've finally unlocked that I'm like, even if someone I know passes me on the street, which is likely at this point, I am okay singing on the street. I'm just going to do it. And if you want to wear a Halloween costume, like you're a 5-year-old boy who won't take off his Spider-Man mask, do it. Like, what? Like, when I wear my mustache wig, no one knows that it's fake. And that's actually so gender affirming for me. Okay. Humane Connection, who's 24, writing in from my boyfriend's mom's kitchen while cooking over 3 pounds of cabbage, said she is taking my first car that a weird but kind man in our makerspace gave me for free. He just gave me a car, dude, and I can just keep it. Okay, that's amazing. That's like reply guy behavior. Those type of people make the world go round. Maria, who's 25 in Chicago, said she's taking plasticity. Human resilience is astounding. How our bodies heal and adapt, how we learn and we grow. Broken bones heal. And I am in many forms experiencing that. I got a few more piercings, and when you get piercings, you're basically just buckling up for like 9 months of healing. Like I specifically was like, I'm going to do it in the winter because you're not really supposed to go swimming. And Lord knows, as soon as the weather hits 70 again, I will be in the lake. So I'm like, this is perfect to really give my body the time to heal. But also you do have to support the healing. Like your body will heal, but you have to support it. If you don't have it set up for success, it's just not going to get there. Now let's talk about the proudful and pride contrast. Because I asked you all, what's something you're too prideful to do? What's something you're proud of? So not exactly answering the question, but like I wanted to see what the relationship between these two things were. And Emily from that broken chair said, too prideful to do karaoke, or maybe it's fear. Can't tell the difference, TBH. I'm proud of the life I've created, the friends I've connected with, and the bonds I've strengthened. And I appreciate that you are allowing for maybe fear being a driver over pride. But as someone who is a devout practitioner of karaoke, I hope that you can find recovery, and I hope that you can find a way to get up there, because performing can be a chance to get your yayas out. Helen, who's 21 in Germany, said she's too prideful to ask questions because it means admitting that I don't know something. Though it might seem a little silly, I'm proud of asking a question in the lab for uni today. Usually I just keep quiet, but today I asked and it went better than I expected. And I don't think it's silly at all, because there's always that notion of like ignorance being humiliating and embarrassing. And in some ways it is, but also it's like, if you're ignorant because you've never had the opportunity to learn it before, then that ignorance can be very quickly rectified by asking a question. So why would we condemn asking a question if that's the path out of ignorance? And so that's why I really believe in like a more horizontal learning environment. I'm someone who, it's like, I love taking classes. I love being a student. I have found a lot of comfort in academics and like studying, reading groups, etc. But I like reading groups more because there's no authority there. There's no teacher there. There's no somebody that knows more than you definitively. And I like it when people are offering humility, where it's like, if we allow teachers and educators to say, I don't know, we can allow students to say, I don't know, and ask more questions and express more doubt. I just think like any environment where people don't allow you to express doubt, you should be wary of. And that is like a very wide claim, but like, let me know if there's anything that you're like, no, it's actually great that I can't express any doubt in this situation, because I don't think we should be encouraging people to just like lather on confidence if it's fraudulent. Olivia, who's 26, writing in from Whoop Whoop, Tennessee, said she is too prideful to let other people see me as I exist in my home. I always have to fix my hair, check my clothes, and tidy my space before letting anyone see. I'm proud of being able to take care of myself well, even with my chronic illnesses, and I don't want anyone to think that I'm failing at it. This was a very bright display of like this overlap, but also contradiction between pride and pridefulness and pride. Because on one hand, it's like, I'm so happy that you take care of yourself well. That's like such a huge accomplishment, especially with chronic illnesses. And if other people interpret taking care of yourself well to mean that like your hair has to be right and your clothes have to be kempt and your spaces be tidy, and they're not allowing for like, oh, maybe our understanding of what it means to take care of yourself is different. But I find this echoing a lot when I enter my friends' homes, is that refrain of like, oh, sorry, it's really messy right now. And then you walk in, you're like, no. And there have been times I want to get to a point where I just stop saying that. And I had some people over before a Halloween party, and they came a lot earlier than I was expecting. And so I really had not tidied anything. But it was like, they're at the front door. It's cold out. I have to let them up. And so I was just kind of like, hey, it's in a state of disarray. I had full depression kitchen sink, which at this point, the depression's gone. The sink is just fucked up. It's like, I actually just seek too much pleasure to keep my sink clean, is the God fucking honest truth. So, the God fucking. So, I don't know what they thought. But because I wasn't too concerned about like making an impression, or like I wasn't too concerned about like impressing them, I just sort of like let it be, and it's fine. You know, the couch was clear, the chair was clear, they could sit. I had clean glassware to pour them a glass of water, so it was fine. And I love the reframe of like, when someone lets you into their home, when it's not perfectly kempt, it's actually because they want you to see them as they are. They don't want to perform for their friends. They want their friends to understand the way that they live. R, who's 26 in Ireland, said, for a long time, the only reason I stayed sober was because my pride stopped me from relapsing. Thankfully, not like that anymore. Also, sadly, too much pride to show my art and be bad at it. And although I have a different relationship to like relapse and sobriety than this person, I think a lot of my discipline does sometimes come from a place of pride, of like, especially when I'm like, okay, I need to stop checking that person's story. I am like, I don't want to dignify them with a story view. I'm too prideful. The pride can motivate me to like pull away or like be disciplined. And that's like a very odd source of motivation. But if it were helping me with a project like sobriety, I don't know, I probably would just be like, well, whatever is helping me. I mean, it's nice when things come from a sustainable place. So maybe pride isn't the most long-term strategy. Gabriel said, too prideful to ask for help. Really proud of how good I am at making people feel like they can ask me for help. See, you all saw obviously the connection between these two questions because I asked them together. They both have a similar word, and like some of you were able to connect the dots in a very thematic way. But really proud of how good I am at making people feel like they can ask me for help and providing said help. And I think this is another thing that people are too prideful to do, too prideful to ask for help. What are we too proud of? In this case, maybe too proud of our self-reliance, our independence, Of course, these things are all born out of our hyper individualist world. And if we adopted a more collectivistic spirit, we'd see that interdependence is actually very noble and brilliant and what makes the world go round. Sarah, who's 25 in New York City, said she's too prideful to admit when I'm lonely. I've come up on the age where all my friends are moving in or getting engaged to their partners. It's beautiful to see them flourish in these relationships that they've nurtured through their 20s, but I can't help but think of that Mitski lyric, everybody's falling in love and I'm falling behind. It's just very hurtful to know that like someone flourishing in their relationship could come at an expense to you. Like there's a cost to that. Like I made a TikTok about this article I read once about just like, I don't want to be socially demoted when someone gets into a relationship. And like, I don't think it has to be that way, especially if we had more community orientation in our monogamous relationships and less social monogamy. Hopefully this wouldn't be as much of a struggle, but like, it's just like absurd to me. That's like, okay, this person got married. I guess I got to make a new friend. Okay, now let's gather up the kinds of people that are drawn to you all. James, who's writing in from, I guess the question I asked to give you this, if you didn't click on the survey link and you don't know, it's, do you find any patterns in the types of people that are drawn to you in this life? How would you characterize them? James, who's 20 in the swamp that is post-midterm stress, said, yes, I do. In one word, thoughtful. In a lot more, they're always willing to hang just to be with me or to run errands. They're wonderful, and I think if my relationships were an art gallery, I would be proud to have showings. Okay, like pride in your friends, love. But again, brings back up the notion of, do the people you surround yourself with say anything about you? Because certainly if you're having an art gallery, you see them as some expression of who you are in the same way that art is an expression. R in Ireland said, for a long time, I was always surrounded by loud-mouthed, hyper-intellectual class jesters. Now I find myself more with extremely funny people who also know how to step back and let others shine. I think this to an extent reflects my own desire to take up space. When I was younger and more insecure, I found it relieving to be around people who were loud and funny so I could kick back and watch with no pressure. Now I think I prefer a more balanced dynamic. Yes. I think I was talking about some other tall AFAB people at a party about like growing up as just like a tall girl. I was like, well, if I'm just going to take up more space for my gender, I might as well just like take up the goddamn space and just like be outspoken and like be self-assured that my voice matters, whatnot. And I don't think we all need to be outspoken, but I do think we all need to feel that our voice matters, like as trite as that is. Chex, who's 34 in the PNW, said, engineer-minded people, tinkerers, makers, inventors of the more mathematical variety. I don't think like them at all. I'm whimsical and creative in a more organic and spiritual way. It's a beautiful yin-yang, but occasionally the two approaches do cause conflict. This is exactly what I'm talking about. If your concept of the world is you are what you eat, you are who you're attracted to, that doesn't work here because this person is surrounded by tinkerers and they're a little, or she's a little more free-flowing than that. Humane Connection said, I noticed that I attract many strange individuals. My partner and friends always ask, where do you meet these people? That's when you fucking know that you've got some real fucking freaks. It's people with completely opposite beliefs from me who I guess feel comfortable sharing because I think I won't judge, but it results in me hearing a lot of interesting opinions. Yeah, I want to hear the truth of a person. I want people to get candid, so I get you in this way. Jared, who's 24, writing in from Alhambra, CA, said, yes, I often attract friends who are the most fantastical, amazing people, but are utterly scatterbrained and flaky. Not with malintent or lack of care, but they literally cannot get it together for whatever reason. I also don't have a lot of male friends, but the one archetype of male friend that continues to appear in my life is the technical / engineering person who's a true sarcastic comedian. Like, it's hard to explain, but throughout my life since high school, I have always just had a technical person who studied a technical field and is just really nonchalant. I just like love that we do know that there's certain archetypes that like find us, and it's like I want to derive meaning from that, and I want to like excavate like how that projects anything. But yeah, I'm really enjoying reading these. Claire in Fort Collins just said Crocs wearers, and like I have very sparing Crocs wearers in my social circle, so like it's truly like there's an ass for every seat. The sleepiest little guy said, I haven't felt this pull from or draw to new people in a long while. I miss it. I know this is a part of the whole putting yourself out there to make friends as an adult conundrum, but I'm finding it incredibly hard to encounter the right environment and social alchemy wherein these people theoretically should be. Would love any advice on this. Well, now that the advice has been solicited, let me offer it. I think like I love the way that you put social alchemy, because I think like it can be really frustrating when you actually do know. This person articulated earlier in the response that like they love Geminis and they love creative, curious, nerdy, needy, and queer people. I also love needy people. I don't know if you meant to write nerdy and autocorrected, but if it is needy, I love that. I love obsessive people too. I love like obsessive. Anyway, it's amazing that you kind of know like who your ilk are or is. And I am someone who's like, I really have a strong sense of like, I know what I want. And my desire is not very vague. But it was where to place that desire was vague. All you have to do is just keep going. Because I have done improv workshops. I have done woodworking classes. I have done comedy. I have gone to random ass birthday parties I had no business really being at. And like over time, somewhere along the way, 2.5 years into doing this in Seattle, I just suddenly I was like, wow, the tractor beam of like the kind of person I really want to be around is getting stronger and brighter, and like it'll close in on itself. Like you will find the coordinates to those people before you know it. So like just keep going. Honestly, like don't give in to the doubt that you're like you should just shutter yourself away. Like keep putting yourself out there, and they'll meet you where you are if you're out and if you're visible. I keep reading Gabriel's responses, but creative, kind, messy, chaotic, neurodivergent, queer, smart, driven people. Yup. Co-signed. Sarah said, I like people who drink a lot, because for a long, long time, most of my early 20s, that was also something I greatly enjoyed. But now I'm afraid that's become the backbone of too many of my friendships. And even though we have just as good a time sober, it is simply too easy to fall back into old habits and routines of going out too much or having one too many drinks. And of course, if I surround myself with hedons, I'm going to encounter some of this too. And actually, I'm loving that I never made this an advice podcast, because I'm like, you didn't ask for advice, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Like, yeah, I see what you mean. I do. Davey said, I am deeply drawn to sincerity and critical thinking in what I feel is a culture characterized by apathy and a disdain for deep engagement and enthusiasm. At least in the sense that people are so commonly and casually belittled for being enthusiasts, enjoyers, and deep engagers. I often feel so weird and alienated for my interests and the intensity with which I enjoy and pursue them, as well as the rigorous analytical perspective I bring to most topics I find fascinating, from meal prepping to whales to friendship to my PhD discipline. When I find someone letting it all hang out, I just feel so drawn to them. I actually had a conversation with someone last night where I emphatically announced, I'm literally obsessed with you, at the end of a long joint ramble about philosophy and political organization and nature and the sublime and horror movies. I love a neurotic little freak. My partner doesn't like it when I call myself a freak because they think I'm cool, but I know that they think I'm cool because they're a freak too. And that is in its own way cool, but I think it's easiest just to say I'm drawn to freaks. Davey, once again, there's something profoundly aligned, because literally was just talking with one of my friends about this. It's just like being obsessed for obsessed, being freak for freak. And I mean this in the most loving way possible, being crazy for crazy, like being around people that let your mad out and let you stim out, and you can fully just like letting it all hang out, unmask, be uninhibited, whatever that means to you. Like, it's so freeing to be in the company of someone like that. And so I actually like have been asking friends if they understand these freak for freak, obsessed for obsessed dynamics. And I think more people do than you even know. Like, we know that we need to find a vessel for that. And it's so special when we find those. And yeah, I think I felt a little insecurity this week that like, I am a very hyper analytical person. I am very judgmental. I'm very discerning. I love to provide cultural critique. And I think then I pathologize it and I think, well, am I ruminating? Am I psychoanalyzing too much? And I'm just like, well, now I'm literally thinking about thinking. Like, so I'm actually just going to accept that, like, at this current phase, I have a podcast called Revelatorium. And like every month I have these little quarter-baked theories that call to me. And I'm like, who am I not to pick up? Who am I not to answer and indulge them a little bit? And like, clearly I'm finding other people in the Revelatorium room that are willing to fill this survey out, like step into it and like fill out the questionnaire. Like, the internet is a vortex, it's a minefield, but also it's like you can find very distilled streams of like, oh, if you're someone who just likes to pontificate about stuff, it's like, well, that's why I like Exploration Live. And that's why I like Up Good with Honey Pluton. And like, that's why I like so much of the art and media I consume, is because I like people who are just like smarties. And I'm not saying people that are like smarties in an elitist way, but people who just like really are bright and clever and like wrestle with these things. So thank you for bringing that all up. And we'll wrap with some very delight-filled responses about what's a time that a stranger showed you hospitality and it meant something to you. Gabriel again said, I spent a year studying in Canada, and this cool, amazing person from my anarchism class, you can't make that up, invited me into their house for a potluck night. Likely thing for an anarchist to do. They were the first person to let me inside their home as I was living away from my own, and it meant so much to me. We ended up becoming really close, and I am happy to report that 2 years later, as I am back in Europe, we are dating and in a long-distance relationship. Let's go. Gabriel, fellow person who's drawn to, or anarchists are drawn to as well. And I'm like, that's why I like anarchists, because they are understanding that we keep each other safe. We are our best hope for survival, for a better world, for transformation, for all of that. And like, they will let you in if they are principled. Vicky, who's 25 in Milwaukee, said, I went to a lunch with an author recently. It was a ticketed event at a fancy women's club. Not usually my vibe, but I wanted to see the author talk. And I was pretty nervous going in. The table I originally sat at had no one there yet, but apparently was reserved for club members. And I was asked to move. Hate that. And a woman at another table invited me to sit with her. It was a small gesture, but she didn't have to do that. I really appreciated being invited rather than risk choosing the wrong seat again. Yes, 1,000% yes. That is what magnanimous people do, is they say, you know what I wouldn't like to be is a person who just got uprooted and displaced from their table and then be searching for belonging. Oh, I can offer that person literally a seat at the table. That expression comes from this, actually. Madeline, who's 28 in Boston, said, I don't know about hospitality necessarily, but a few years ago, a friend bought me flowers for my birthday. And as a trans woman who had never been given flowers before, it meant and continues to mean the world to me. And this just emboldens my practice of when there are flowers blooming and I go on a little flower walk and I know I'm going to go over to my friend's house later, I'll put a few flowers in a Topo Chico bottle and I'll bring it over. And it's a little bit of like a chef's choice, cat's pick bouquet of wildflowers. And it's always met with so much of a warm embrace. Mim, who's 23, writing in from the beach house that I am house sitting and taking advantage of because I'll never be able to afford actually living here, said, I was anxious about getting to a meeting today and a stranger let me in at a busy intersection and it was so nice, especially after watching so many cars line up so closely specifically to not let me in. You can be that on the road. You can let people in. We're all bred with urgency and like this entitlement to deliverance on the road, but also we're all going to get where we need to get to, okay? Letting someone in could maybe add 20 seconds. Go for it. You can relieve someone of pressure. And why wouldn't you want to do that? Jared said, last spring, the bus lady would often give me free rides. She would cover the scanner for my bus card and tell me to go. She would often call me mijo, which is funny because not a lot of people would recognize I'm Mexican at first glance. It honestly made me feel connected in a way. Often in LA, it's hard to feel a sense of community, especially in the suburbs that I lived in and the suburbs I currently live in. On the bus and with the bus lady, it actually felt like a community. Let's go, bus lady! And I have found that bus drivers are a very critical role in a community and in my life. And they are such agents of service. And like, it's such a hard job. And I'm so grateful they do it. And people that don't thank the bus driver on the way out, like, what? Thank you. Renee Margot in New Brunswick, Canada, who's 34, said, TMI, but you asked. A woman named Bones put me up on her farm in Maine on my solo road trip to Massachusetts this summer. She's a friend of my birth mother, but was a stranger to me at the time. She is a death doula and a professional animal tracker. The combo of these things makes her an exceptional listener and a general vibe reader. Truly life-changing morning coffee chats. It meant a lot to me to have fully open and vulnerable conversations about my experience as an adoptee with someone who knows, loves, and respects my birth mother so much while still centering me and my incredibly nuanced experience of being in an open adoption situation. A rare opportunity for that level of being seen and heard. I am like actually rejoicing in that. Like, first of all, intergenerational relationships, period. So affirming. I reconnected with a really important person in my past, a high school teacher who offered me so much wisdom this past weekend. And to see her 10 years later in a position in life that I could only dream of being in, like really defends her values, shows up when nobody else will, fierce protector and defender of the people in her life. I'm like, I could fucking cry right now. I'm so fucking inspired by her. And like, I'm just so glad that I, with the encouragement of my best friend whose class we met in, decided to reach back out. And like, now so many amazing things are going to be born from it. Like, it's going to be ongoing, and that's amazing. So I'm just really feeling your response pass through me in a glowing way. Hannah, who's 26 in Alabama, said, it was hard not to leave a list of 100 people, which hospitality-wise does not surprise me that you have that many, considering you are in the South, where it's more established. In quick rapid fire, thank you to everyone in DC who gave a scared college-aged me who had never ridden public transit in her life so many directions and pass-throughs through the fair doors. Thank you to strangers who helped guide me out of the forest of Chattanooga during a thunderstorm and drove me to my car. Thank you to my next door neighbor who I met when I was moving out and who helped move my mattress across town because you owned a truck. Thank you to every Uber driver who acted as a therapist for me. Thank you to the random couple who stopped on the Jersey Turnpike when I thought my car was going to explode. As dark as the world seems, the universe continues to give me signs of beauty in the form of kind strangers. Yes, the hell yes. I hope all my neighbors heard that. Like I will never give up on my fellow beings. Like I'm a humanist down. Maybe even an animalist. Like I just refuse to be misanthropic when this many people exist to help each other out. If you give them opportunity, there will be some times you're let down, but don't let the bastards get you down, as Rihanna once sang. Cheers to the freaking weekend. And Hannah, I will drink to that. Next time I ever have a glass of Prosecco in my hand, which is one of the rare times I will drink. Carter is 28 in Portland, said, my first time couch surfing in rural India, I caught a really bad cold and the really lovely family I was staying with took care of me and gave me traditional medicines and basically nursed me back to health, including cooking whole meals for me when I later found out they were fasting for a particular religious festival. And they did it without even thinking or hesitating. I could have had such a bad time sick and alone in a new place, and they helped me feel so safe and nurtured. Oh my God, I'm verklempt. Like these are building upon each other and like crescendoing in such a compassionate way. Like we can be so good to each other and you can be so good to others. Like this week in my building lobby, I saw one of my neighbors leave a bouquet for another that had rescued their keys somehow. I don't know if they found them on the sidewalk or what, but it was so beautiful to see that little exchange. And like when I first moved into my building, my neighbor said it was really antisocial. And I said, well, maybe I'll be the one to change that. And I don't think I'm responsible solely for that little exchange, but like I have really put in a lot of concerted effort and energy to like stir a feeling of camaraderie and community in this building. And like it's happening. And I'm just feeling like I never want to see that light go out. Chloe, who's 20 in springtime fever in the Southern Hemisphere, said, I'll never forget the time I dropped my wallet in the city and someone picked it up and ran over to give it back to me. It struck me to the bone because it reminded me that humans aren't all greedy, money/power hungry beings. That stranger gained nothing by giving me back my wallet, but there is good in this world that overthrows a self-contained life perspective. Nothing to add. You've said it all. Elle, who's 28 in Colorado Springs, first snow of the season, said, in 2015, my friend and I got stuck on Easter Island while on study abroad. Great place to be stuck, one of the most remote places on the planet with only 2 flights a day. A local woman saw us crying in front of the airline office and took us home with her, fed us, and housed me for the night. My friend got on a flight that same day. She stayed at the airport until we knew my friend had made the flight. The next day, I think she stayed at the airport until she knew I had made it on my flight too. We're still friends on Facebook. I hope she knows what a godsend she was and how much it reassured me to just be taken care of by a mom. I was barely 19 and study abroad was my first trip outside the USA. Again, I'm literally feeling so emotional. Like the role of mother, like any of us can inhabit that role. The role of caretaker, it's genderless actually. The role of like hospitality provider, you can be that for someone and they will remember it for 9 years. They will be so glad to be your Facebook friend. How many people are you really glad to be Facebook friends with? Someone like this, you can earn that level of cheer And serendipitously, that's the last one, which is good because as the video viewers can tell by my couch position and refusal to even turn my head to make eye contact with the camera, my fortitude for recording these knows no bounds. I was like, I literally have like one opportunity to record this, and it's late in the evening, and I have a early call time tomorrow. So like, once again, I am bohemian in this way where I'm just like, organizing my life around a monthly podcast is kind of inane, and like it wouldn't make sense to most people. It doesn't make sense to my mom, like, but it's just something I have to do. It is literally something it is something I request of myself to do because it is how I wring out the rag of my month and like really make the most of it. And I hope you are able to find a way to have a good time this next month, to show hospitality, to show solidarity. If you're still here, I'd love to have you over on Patreon. I have $3, $5, and $10 tiers. It's basically like, as Honey Pluton put it, a tip jar. It's just a way to show gratitude or appreciation for anything you may get from this audio video experience. And there's a lot of podcast episodes from the vault on there, as well as a recent talk I gave in DC for PBS about longevity and creative burnout, if that is of interest. So that one's actually free. So you can go on my Patreon to look at that one for free. And then if you like that, consider upping it. I recently upped one of my Substack subscriptions from free to paid. And I don't know why they make it so hard to find where to do that, but I love being a patron of the arts. Okay. Thank you so much for listening. I will see y'all next time, and Cather out.